अस्सलाम वालेकुम, हेलो एंड वेलकम टू अनदर शो ऑफ लेट्स टॉक विद PakHub। आई एम योर होस्ट मुदस्सिर ज़की फ्रॉम लंदन। नाज़रीन, हमारा शो पाकिस्तान में और पाकिस्तान से बाहर रहने वाली उर्दू स्पीकिंग कम्युनिटी के लिए। इस शो में हम दूसरी कम्युनिटीज़ के लोगों को भी शामिल करेंगे। नाज़रीन, जैसे कि आप देख सकते हैं, हम इस वक्त लंदन के अंदर जो रिचमंड पार्क है वहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। चूँकि आज थोड़ी सनलाइट हमें मिल रही थी और मेरा बाहर का प्रोग्राम भी था, तो मैंने मुनासिब समझा कि मैं बाहर ही इस एपिसोड को शूट करूं। तो नाज़रीन, आज का शो जो हम इस वक्त कर रहे हैं, ये एक बिल्कुल मुख्तलिफ नौइयत का और एक यूनिक नौइयत का शो है। और इसमें हम पाकिस्तानी कम्युनिटी की बात नहीं करेंगे, बल्कि हम बात करेंगे इंडियन कम्युनिटी की। हमारे हमसाया मुल्क में इस वक्त जो किसान मूवमेंट, एक बहुत बड़ा एहतजाज चल रहा है इस वक्त, जो कि 5-6 महीने पहले शुरू हुआ। पूरे इंडिया के अंदर एक बहुत सिचुएशन सी बनी हुई। तो नाज़रीन, प्रोग्राम में आगे बढ़ने से पहले हम आपको बताते चलें कि अगर अभी तक आपने हमारा यूट्यूब का चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो अभी यूट्यूब पर जाएँ, लेट्स टॉक विद PakHub को सर्च करें, हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन पर क्लिक करें, ताकि जो भी लेटेस्ट इन्फॉर्मेशन है, जो भी मालूमात हैं, वो आप तक पहुँचती रहें। तो नाज़रीन, आज की इस एपिसोड में हमें ज्वाइन किया है जसवीर सिंह साहब ने, जो कि सिख प्रेस एसोसिएशन में से उनका ताल्लुक़ है, और वो हमें इस लेटेस्ट डेवलपमेंट के बारे में बात करेंगे। क्योंकि ये हमारी गुफ्तगू इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में हुई थी, इसलिए हमारी भरपूर कोशिश यही थी कि हम आसान ज़ुबान में, आसान इंग्लिश में आप तक जो है लेटेस्ट डेवलपमेंट जो है इन्फॉर्मेशन पहुँचाएँ। हमारी भरपूर कोशिश होगी कि अगली किसी एपिसोड में हम आपको उर्दू में या पंजाबी में तमाम जो हैं इस किसान प्रोटेस्ट के बारे में जो है एक सेगमेंट भी करें। Thank you very much, Jasveer Singh Saab. You have joined us. And first of all, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Jasveer Singh, and I am the Senior Press Officer for the Sikh Press Association. We work between the Sikh community internationally and the media.
All right, thank you very much. So my first question regarding this farmer protest is, what is the importance of the Kisan community, of the farmer community in any country?
In every country, the role of the Kisan, the farmer, is of the highest importance. There's that great saying that maybe a few times in your life you will need the help of a doctor, but every single day you'll need the help of a farmer. That really shows the importance of the farming community to all people, to every single culture, country, and beyond. Specifically for India, the farming community, the agricultural industry, it puts food on the table for hundreds of millions of families and is directly involved in the community of so many towns, areas. It is the lifeblood. It is what keeps communities going and functioning. The whole of society of much of India is based around farming. So the importance really cannot be underplayed.
So as we know that at the moment in the world's largest democracy, there's a world's biggest protest is happening from last 6 months. So what is the reason that why people are gathering in around the country, other parts, and especially in Delhi? What is the reason that this protest is happening from last 6 months?
So the reason is that the Indian government under Modi's BJP party, they have forced 3 new farming laws on the farming community in India. These 3 new farming laws were forced on them without any consultation with any farming union groups or representative groups. And they are seen as very exploitative new laws. These new laws are seen as ways for corporations to really maximize their profit in their work with, in their trade with the farmers of India. And there's a lot of concern that this will lead to bankruptcy of farmers. This will lead to their lands being seized by these big corporations. And in general, the laws are seen as very unfair and imbalanced when it comes to the relationship between farmers and corporations. So with their livelihoods on the line, with the thought that this business, if you will, this trade, this lifestyle, which has been in families for generations, we're talking about for many families, 100+ years, with the thought that this could be lost for them, farmers across the whole of India, they've begun this protest. They've gone outside the city of Delhi, around the borders, in and around Delhi, to camp outside the capital of India until the laws are changed, until the laws are revoked.
Yes, I was watching some videos on YouTube and some reports from international news outlets. So I have seen that from last 6 months, it's a proper organized protest that we haven't seen anywhere before in the world. So people, they have proper washing facility, cleaning facility, they are having food there, they're having langar there, and the women, they're also participating by preparing the food. And so it's a properly organized protest. So can you tell me which communities are actually participating?
I think it would be nearly impossible for me to summarize how many communities are involved. But as you said, this is an issue to do with farming, that the Kisan of India, and they come in many, many forms. So you're talking about Punjabi Sikhs from Punjab, of course, communities of Hindu and Muslim from places like Haryana, Rajasthan, even all the way down south in places like Chennai, we've seen protests, Gujarat. So this is very much an India-wide movement with participation from various communities. And one thing to add, it is also heavily participated in and supported by what many the communities that some people call the low-caste communities of India. So you're talking about the Dalit community, for example, and they are the majdur, the laborers, and they, of course, are very much ingrained within the farming industry within India. They are very prominent within this movement because they represent the mazdur, the laborers that are integral to the farming industry of India. And they are playing a prominent role in the movement, in the protest, both in participation and behind the scenes by just helping the movement continue to function. So this is definitely a movement which is inclusive of all types of communities within India.
All right. So we have seen from many news reports, and if you go on the internet, that leaders in Australia, Canada, Italy, New Zealand, Pakistan, UK, USA, many leaders, MPs, they are supporting the Kisan community. And also, I have read that some NGOs, they are out there helping the people who are sleeping on the street in the protest. So in this whole scenario, as an international community, is there any solidarity protest going on outside India, or where, because the Sikh community, Kisan community, has a lot of relatives, friends, and family members in Canada, in America, in UK here. So can you give some examples, or what is international community doing?
So the international community, especially the Sikh community, has ever since late November been very, very active in showing moves of showing demonstrations of solidarity with the movement. And this is in countries from the UK, Australia, Canada, America, Austria, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy. There are dozens of countries, or a dozen plus countries, where there have been movements. And this is very much because in India, when this movement started, the police, the Delhi police, Punjab police, they were putting up barriers to stop the protest movement reaching Delhi. And it was very much the Sikh Punjabi community that were removing those barriers. They were going through the attacks by police to ensure that the movement landed upon Delhi. And in countless interviews, hundreds of interviews, the participants of this protest in India, they said they're doing this because of their Sikh faith, because of Sikhi, the religion, the history of resistance and fighting against oppression means that this is something that they must do. And this resonated a lot with the international Sikh community, the global Sikh community. And that's why we've seen so much. We've seen protests, we've seen car rallies, we've seen exhibitions, we've seen movements to ensure that, like you said, political leaders are addressing what the local communities are talking about. And we've seen fundraising efforts for the movement in India to ensure that they get food and so much more. So there's a lot going on, and this is very much
And
now.
There's also an e-petition going on here in UK. So, I think more than 100,000 people have joined that petition, signed that petition online to take this matter into the hand of MPs to discuss it.
Indeed, that there was that huge petition, and there's actually many petitions of a similar nature that have been ongoing to try and get more awareness, but also more direct action when it comes to this movement. Because we have to remember, as much as it is ongoing and it's a kind of political and maybe even economical discussion, lives are being lost right now. Over 264 farmers have died since the protest has begun through their participation at the protest. And so therefore, the Sikh community, we very much view this as an issue of kind of life and death.
As we know that the media is playing very important role in any society and in any country. So at the moment, the mainstream media, the corporate mainstream media, it's the media outlets are calling these former farmer protesters that they are terrorists, they are anti-nationalist. Even they are calling the protesters as a Khalistani. So is that right thing to do? And on the other hand, is there any representation from the farmer side into the newsroom, or they are just the upper caste people from the Hindu community who are controlling the media and who are controlling the news outlet?
Well, we have to be clear that the media of India is very biased. Some would say, I would say, very corrupt. They are ranked in the press freedom rankings 142nd out of 180 countries for press freedom. So there's very little freedom in these countries. And as you said, there is an overarching influence from the upper caste Hindu community, which is very much nationalist. They very much see India as Hindustan, a country for the Hindus, where the rights of the Hindu community should be placed above anything else. And therefore, their support is based around their support against the movement, the support for the government is based on this rhetoric that, as you said, the farmers' movement is anti-national. It is by no means anti-national. Of course, it might be supported by some that people view as anti-national, but that is only because it is just another example of the very poor governance and the mistreatment of the Indian government against its own people. So the accusations that are coming from the Indian media, I think the wider world is now very much aware that they are tainted, that they come with influence from the government directly and from the kind of Hindutva nationalist mindset. And therefore, they can't be taken seriously about what the farmers' movement is. And your other question was about the farmers' protest. Do they have connection with the media? Well, they're doing their best to kind of get their own voices out there. They're on social media. They have the Trolley Times, the newspaper that they've also released, and they're doing their best to try and kind of amplify the voices that matter to them, the representative voices. And that's also what the Sikh Press Association are trying to do. We try to amplify those voices too, so you hear something authentic rather than the biased news from the Indian media.
Yeah, and we have seen from the international human rights activists, many people supported, especially Rihanna, as we know, the international singer. She also tweeted, and she got very furious reaction from the politician and from the Indian media. Then Greta Thunberg, she also mentioned that, and Mina Harris, who is the niece of the vice president of US, she also sent a message. And there are some other celebrities, Amanda Cerny and other celebrities. They are sending messages, tweets, and they are getting very strange and very negative response from the Indian community, especially, and Indian media. And some Twitter accounts were also blocked, some tweets were deleted, some websites and news outlets who are speaking for the protesters, it's being blocked or deleted. So it's completely messy situation at the moment.
Most definitely. I mean, the participation from these celebrities or more well-known figures such as Mina Harris, Greta Thunberg, and Rihanna, I think that comes from a very authentic place because this has been called the biggest protest in history. So with the magnitude of this movement, it was eventually going to filter into these, bigger mainstream circles. And all they're asking is, why aren't we talking about this more? What can we do more around this? But the reaction to those tweets and, that this focus on the movement from the likes of Rihanna, the reaction from mainly Indians has made this an even bigger story because their reactions have been so vile. They've been threatening all types of horrible things towards these people. They've been accusing them of being anti-national, which is just ridiculous because the information that they've put out there regarding the movement is very much just based on basic human rights. So if asking for basic human rights is anti-national, then that says a lot about India. So it is a bit of a, some would say, messy situation, but I think what we're really seeing is passionate responses to a massive, massive movement. Again, possibly the biggest protest in history. People have been there living on the streets, as you say, around Delhi since late November. So it has been a long time. And they are very resolute on their stance that they're not going to move until the laws are completely revoked because they see no way to work within these three new farming laws. However, the Indian media at the same time is now going down a new narrative to try and claim that the movement is dying or is getting smaller, where in fact it is increasing as we're seeing huge community meetings and protests in support of the movement in places like Rajasthan, all over India really, regularly happening. So what will happen? As you said, the farmers, a lot of them, especially those of a Punjabi Sikh background, they've said they're not going anywhere and they're prepared to die for this cause. And we have to believe in that steadfastness that they're showing. And as far as I'm aware, as far as I believe, they are not going anywhere. So this is really going to play out into a long situation. We're going to see more upheaval when we're coming into April now, which is, you know, the harvest season, and we're going to see how that is impacted by this protest. As the weather gets warmer as well, we know that, you know, summers in India around Delhi can be brutally hot, and there's going to be very difficult conditions for these farmers to stay in when living on the streets as they are. So we're going to see just this continue, but we might actually see the situation worsen. And the last thing I would like to say about this is in terms of how the situation may resolve itself. We've already seen examples of it, but it needs to be noted that the history of the Indian government and the Indian state shows that the way that they deal with such situations like this, like the farmers' protest, is usually through brutal violence. They often show no hesitation in actually killing their own citizens through the police, through the army, to try and stop movements like this. And we've already seen examples of that with the farmers' protest. We've seen police, Indian authorities torture and even kill people. And that is a great concern of those that are following this protest, that the Indian government will once again revert to type and they will try and stop this movement through violence.
Okay, thank you very much. And what is the last message you want to give to the people who are listening this show? Because this show will be circulated in Punjabi community, in Sikh community, here in Pakistani community. So what is the message that you want to give by using this platform?
The message is that this is a very, very big moment in the history of India, in the history of movements against oppressive governments like the current BJP Modi government. And with that in mind, anyone who recognizes human rights, anyone that recognizes fighting against oppression or tyranny, they really must focus on this current farmers' protest movement and they must support it any way they can. And the more pressure that is put on the Indian government to actually do what their citizens want, because there's hundreds of millions supporting this farmers' protest. So the more pressure that's put on them to act in the favor of the protest, the better the outcome will hopefully be, and we can avoid the violence that the Indian government usually resorts to in these situations. So let's all try and support the movement as much as we can and continue focusing on what might be the biggest protest in history.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us discussing the key points of this protest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
तो जसवीर सिंह साहब, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, आपने हमें ज्वाइन किया, आपने कीमती वक्त से टाइम निकाला और हमें जो है ये जो किसान मूवमेंट है, जो ये किसान प्रोटेस्ट है, इसके बारे में जो की पॉइंट्स है उनके बारे में आपने हमें बताया। तो नाज़रीन, अगर आप भी समझते हैं कि आप भी शो का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं, या आप भी किसी किस्म की आपके पास इंफॉर्मेशन है, नॉलेज है या रिसर्च है जिससे हमारी कम्युनिटी का जो है वो फ़ायदा हो सकता है, तो आप हमें कांटेक्ट करें। हमारी कांटेक्ट डिटेल्स जिस वक्त आपको स्क्रीन पर नजर आ रही होंगी। तो नाज़रीन, अगर अभी तक आपने हमारे यूट्यूब का चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो अभी यूट्यूब पर जाएं, लेट्स टॉक विद पाक को सर्च करें, हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, बेल आइकन पर क्लिक करें ताकि जो भी लेटेस्ट इन्फॉर्मेशन है या शोज़ हैं वो आप तक पहुँचते रहें। तो नाज़रीन, ये थी हमारी आज की एपिसोड। इंशाल्लाह अगली फिर किसी एपिसोड में आपसे दोबारा मुलाकात होगी। स्टे ट्यून विद अस, कीप वॉचिंग लेट्स टॉक विद पाक। अपने होस्ट मुदस्सिर की कोई इजाज़त दीजिए। अस्सलाम वालेकुम।